Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee. We will go through and take attendance. I am Mayor Joe Kelly. Mayor, oh my gosh, don't tell Dagan I said that. And then I messed his name up, sorry.
And that's on tape.
Thanks, Kevin. Assistant Mayor Joe Kelly.
And still the assistant mayor. I'm Councilor John Tabor.
I'm Mary Lone.
John O'Leary.
Megan Corsetti.
Jen Stebbins Thomas.
Eric Anderson.
Andrew Simonis.
Counselor Beth Moreau. I forgot my name.
And staff with us this evening.
Peter Stiff.
Howard Snyder, the Housing Navigator.
Housing.
Thank you.
Not our names.
We do have one absent member today, Tracy, and then we do have two members who will be Zooming in, Byron Matto and Dagan. Perfect. And tonight we are looking to put forward a recommendation to the City Council for the disposition of a Sherburne school. I would look to change a little bit of the agenda. I would look for a motion to actually bring up public comment first so that we can get some input from any public here.
Happy to make that motion.
First, second.
Second.
And Simonis, second. All in favor? Aye. Perfect. If you are here to speak, please come up and state your name. We ask that you keep, much like a council meeting, 3 minutes in your heart. We've heard a lot of public comment over this process, so if you have spoken, feel free to speak again, but don't feel it necessary. We do remember what everyone says. So please come up to the podium. And if you are a representative of either organization, we will be giving you 3 to 5 minutes after public comment to speak. We will not be putting out any questions to any representatives, though. So please come up to the podium if you'd like to speak. And make sure to state your name and your address for the record.
Yes, hello, good evening. I'm Vicki Boyd. I live on Pinehurst Road. I've been there for about 8 years, and I've actually worked in Portsmouth for 20 years over at Heinemann downtown as a hiring manager, and for the last 7 years that I was there was the general manager. So I want to, first of all, thank you for your devotion to this issue. I know from an employer's perspective how difficult it is to attract and retain talent into a city where housing is just unaffordable, especially for the young entry-level talent. And I also want to congratulate you on your RFP discovery process that has surfaced two capable development partners. I am here this evening to urge you to recommend to the City Council that the city partner with PHA in the Sherburne project. In my estimation, what the RFP process identified is there's nothing POA proposed in its concept that PHA couldn't deliver or wouldn't consider, and that won't be up for consideration in the public engagement process. All other things equal, I think PHA is your partner of choice, and for a number of compelling reasons. We're fortunate to have a nationally recognized housing authority right here in Portsmouth. PH leaders are our neighbors and colleagues. We know they are accountable to us. They live and work right here alongside us. They're our local partner that's been here for the city and its residents for decades. They've proven time and again they know how to engage the community and attract the support and resources necessary to get the job done with distinction. Most recently, right downtown in the form of the award-winning Ruth Griffin Place. There's no reason to look outside the city when our own local housing authority was literally made for jobs like Sherburne, and we know tapping their proven abilities will strengthen their ability to do more for us. I think the most compelling reason perhaps is that choosing PHA is an investment itself in Portsmouth. I hate to see a single dollar siphoned off to an outside developer when by choosing PHA, we have the opportunity to see every dollar involved in Sherburne reinvested right here in building PHA's capacity to do even more good for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Jim Smalley, Portsmouth.
I have a little bit of a cold here, so I apologize for that. This is why I support POHA. PHA has 25% of the rental units in the city, is the city's largest landlord. I'm just concerned about making it, the city's largest landlord even larger without any competitive piece here. Competition's healthy for both PHA and POHA. It will make both better organizations. Competition between these two organizations will also benefit the city going forward on future workforce housing initiatives. PO, scored higher than PHA in every category, and not by a little, but by a lot. My biggest concern here is, PHA has done a wonderful job over the years, decades, of assisting the truly needy in providing housing. Concerns about zoning and the impact on housing affordability have been voiced for decades as well. Just as they've been involved in this community locally for decades, this crisis and the zoning and the impact on housing, the lack of affordability, has been known for and voiced for decades as well. Becoming a crisis only as housing affordability affects the middle class. PHA directly benefits from this crisis. PHA directly benefits from the zoning that artificially restricts supply and makes housing and rentals less affordable. I am unaware of PHA leadership ever seeking to have the restrictive zoning changed, or speaking out, or showing up at the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee unless it was to advocate for itself. Has PHA sat idly by? Its leaders show up when money's on the line. PHA seeking to change the zoning may not be good politics, but it is good business. Nonprofits have a history of not seeking to solve the problem that gives reason to their raison d'etre. PHA has proven itself as a force to make housing more affordable by advocating not just for itself. Had PHA proven itself as a force to make housing more affordable by advocating not just for itself but for all, I'd support them, and I've supported them in the past. But their failure to advocate for all speaks volumes. And lastly, nonprofits aren't saints, for-profits aren't sinners. They're both good organizations, both solid, both strong. And local is of little value if it comes by excluding competition. You'll better both organizations by letting them compete, just as they competed on this RFP. POHA was the clear front runner in that case. This is why I support POHA, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Next speaker.
Peter Huda, 2A South Street. This is my 2 cents. So after attending the joint meetings of the City Council and Housing Committee, several concerns emerged regarding just an understanding of the basic competitive bidding laws and the RFPs. It became clear that some members of the group were unaware of the legal restrictions against discriminatory practices such as limiting the RFP to local developers. According to Stephen Buckley, the NHMA's Contracting 101, restricting bids to local developers or favoring local contractors violates the U.S. Constitution Privileges and Immunity Clause, which prohibits discrimination against citizens of other states unless there is a substantial reason. Municipal competitive bidding must be unbiased and non-discriminatory, focused solely on the merits of the proposal. And just to make a comment on that, I think the selection committee that was selected by the city manager did a fantastic job on this. I reviewed all of the committee's score sheet and the observations, and they were excellent, in my humble. Some clarifying misconceptions. Additionally, it's important to address the fundamental misunderstanding about the Portsmouth Housing Authority and its affiliated nonprofit, PHA Housing Development Limited. While the PHA was created by the city in 1953 to provide affordable housing, its affiliated nonprofit, PHA Housing Development, is not a department of the city. PHA Housing Development Limited is a nonprofit and operates independently and includes shareholders who expect a return on their investment in the form of tax credits. See their filings at the state of New Hampshire. The Sherburne School project therefore involves comparing two private nonprofits, not one who's a part of the city, not one who's not from out of town. POA and PHA. The other thing for this committee to keep in mind, broad eligibility. The use of LIHTC financing and other federal and state grants means housing units could be open to applicants from anywhere, not just Portsmouth residents. Please keep that in mind. Now, the evaluation of the proposals. After reviewing the selection committee, both the master worksheet and general observations, let me tell you why POH stood out to me. Their site design considerations. The building and site ranked number one in the evaluations with significant scoring gap on page 1 of 48 points. POA's design featured multiple smaller scale buildings per the request of the RFP, which foster community feel and integrated amenities. Community engagement. POH demonstrates superior neighborhood engagement, connecting directly with local residents. In contrast, PHA's engagement appears to be focused on the city rather than the community it aims to serve. Commitment to community impact. POA invests 25% of corporate net income in resident services, totaling $7.4 million over the past 5 years. Additional reinvestment includes 32% for property upgrades and 33% for reserves. POAH's professional approach. POAH has no competing applications with New Hampshire Housing Authority, which only allows one at a time, ensuring the Sherburne project will be its main priority. As many of you know, and was discussed at the council meeting, PHA has awarded and accepted the contract on the Lafayette Church. The problem with that remains, and Councilor Tabor correctly asked about this at the meeting, is there is a deed restriction on the property which still has not been settled. So when I think about this, I think of the push out for this to settle this, because I don't know how long it's been since they signed the contract, but if this is awarded to PHA, will Sherburne be the second in line? Because they've already signed this contract, they're going to move forward with everything, and then the concern is the timing, which all of you were very concerned about. My concerns about the PHA proposal: lack of comprehensive planning or limited vision. PHA's plan includes mothballing the school building and constructing a 4-story block for Phase 1, with no further development plans. A non-starter for the community is concerning. Taxpayer dependency. PHA proposal relies on additional CIP funding from the taxpayers of Portsmouth to support features like artist space, raising questions of equity. Now, I know they told you and they answered this in the questions, but when you do a proposal, you are putting forward for the selectors what you think in the pro forma it's going to cost you and where your funding requirements are. The city is listed both in a funding and in there as a CIP. The other thing that was concerning about something that was answered in the questions is they said that to avoid confusion, the city staff made a mistake here. Now, it would be very concerning to me as a resident if the city staff had prepared this. This is a private development corporation which should be preparing their own proposals. I'll leave it at that. The other thing that struck me as very professional on POHA's part was the readiness to pay $100,000 to PHA. This is listed in their pro forma for initial reports. Basically, this reflects the professionalism and preparedness of POHA. They understood that PHA did a lot of work on this, and they are ready to reimburse them on that. Let's see.
How are we doing on time, Peter?
Pardon me?
How are we doing on time?
I'm just about done, John. Okay. Thank you. The other thing that was concerning, affordable housing definition. For both proposals, federal and state funding eligibility means units will be open to applicants nationwide, potentially reducing the availability for local residents. We all know that. PHA's statement that LIHCT provisions allow acceptance of households with incomes up to 80% of the median income, AMI, seems contrary to the purpose of affordable housing. The timeline and capacity questions. PHA projected a 2027 completion date. seems to apply to only Phase 1 because there was nothing else listed in there. I brought this up in the last one, and to me, this raises doubts about the full completion of the timeline. If they're going to mothball the school, and basically in the questions they said that there was other things that were going on, they know about that because they have inside information, which POHA did not have. Aside from that, there was nothing else about Phase 2 and when this would happen. Commitments elsewhere. With PHA already committed to a major project with New Hampshire Housing on Lafayette Road, their ability to ensure funding for both cast doubt on their capacity to deliver the Sherburne in full. The timing on this, timing for all of us here is critical on getting affordable housing into Portsmouth. So in conclusion, POH's well-rounded proposal, prioritization of community impact and readiness to execute make it a clear choice for the important project. Let's ensure the Sherburne School development achieves its full potential with a plan that benefits Portsmouth residents and aligns with the Portsmouth City goals. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Next speaker. Come on up.
Hello. My name is Robert Etkin, and I live at 245 Middle Street. I've been a Portsmouth housing resident for almost 13 years. The one thing that, and I've talked to other residents about this, the one thing the residents do like and is very important to them is having, when they have to call and they get a hold of someone, they know them, they've dealt with them, and they're local, and it makes them comfortable. I'm the same way. I lived here when I was a kid. I was able to come back home because of PHA. So keeping things local and keeping the residents comfortable are very important. And the residents really work well with PHA and they work well with the residents. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Anna K. Vorsteg, Pinehurst. Here again, I can't stop trying to crack this nut. So I guess one of the things as you consider this is I don't want to discount at all the process with the proposals that were put forward. My concern is a lot of it had to do with the actual construction, and a lot of that will be, again, on the table in the public phase. What I'm really concerned about is the decision to take city land and lease it, which I actually think is a very wise thing, but to lease it to an entity that will then have proceeds, which really then is making money off of city land. If we go with POA, that money is going towards POA, obviously. If we go with PHA, it is going to come to staff and other needs within Portsmouth. I'm a nonprofiter, so I look at 990s and I look at the financials that are open to the public. You can be a nonprofit and profit. And I know the other night it was said the profit margins aren't that big, but it is just not lost on me when I look at the salaries of a POA, and they are not 3% higher than a PHA, they're not 30% higher. The highest salary is 3 times that of the highest salary. And there are a page full of salaries at hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when I think about where the money goes or why an entity is interested in something, I can't help but look at, again, this question of nonprofit. It means to serve a public good, but there's a big, broad definition of nonprofit. I think PHA in all of its forms, the latest form of recent to help build, is what I would say is a true nonprofit that is serving this community. I would say look no further than the salaries. Look no further than the names and the addresses of the employees and where they live and what they make. I think this project is a wonderful opportunity to expand PHA to serve its employees in the way that they've served us and to bring more resources. I think that, I just think it's a bigger question than are we going to go with one big building or multiple small buildings, but who are we entering a lease with and who will benefit from that? The only other thing which, my neighbor said so well is to have people from our community here to respond to the needs of the residents that will live there, I think is really important. So competition, all of those questions, I would just say let's be mindful of what we're competing for and let's look at what has been done. And and I just thank you for listening to my comments. And again, I just thank you for your work. I think it's relatively thankless. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Anna. Any more speakers?
I'm Jeffrey Cooper, 227 Park Street. I was here Monday night also, and so between Monday and tonight we've listened to a lot of speakers, and almost everybody speaks. I'm in favor of PHA, I'm in favor of POA, or whatever, and basically between the two developers. There was one notable exception to that. That was Emma Stratton, who represented the Arts and Cultural Commission, who read a statement from the Arts and Cultural Commission, which I have here to read to you. The Arts and Cultural Commission urges the City Council to support Artist Live Workspace as called for in the 2023 Portsmouth Cultural Plan, is a key component of any redevelopment of the Sherburne School property as workforce housing. It is committed to work with any developer chosen for that project as a resource for implementation of that goal and supports adaptive reuse of the existing building as called for in the 2023 Portsmouth Cultural Plan. So I hope you've noticed that the statement from the Arts and Cultural Commission didn't endorse one particular developer or another, but just addressed what we would like to see in the project. I'm aware that one of the proposals does call for adaptive reuse of the Sherburne School building as Artist Live Workspace with a common area in it for artist use, and determine it could be used as gallery, could be used as shop space or whatever. And the cultural plan that we've been referring to was developed with a lot of public input. On Monday, there was a lot of talk about a continued public input process that would be going on. However, the public input that has already happened has called for that in the city of Portsmouth. We know that the arts community is a big contributor to the economic well-being of the entire city. It's a driver of what makes Portsmouth such a great place to live. And artists are being priced out of the community. And so, we need to, as I said on Monday, make it affordable for artists to live, work, and thrive here in Portsmouth, keep them here so that they don't move up to Livermore, Maine, or wherever they're going. But we want to keep them right here and keep the artist community here. So we would urge you, because I'm not speaking here on behalf of the commission except for reading their statement, but I would urge you to instead of thinking, do we like this organization or that organization, I know your history of the whole thing so far has been to focus on what's the actual content of the proposal. The one proposal does have whatever I've described, and so I would hope that you would choose the proposal that does have that. If the other developer has that component in it, that's okay too, but at the moment only one proposal has it. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Any last speakers?
Good evening, Patricia Martine, Aldrich Road, longtime resident of Portsmouth. My lovely city has created a housing authority, and I think they've done an amazing job. There's no reason that they can't continue to grow. The development process in and of itself is a very competitive process. So even as a housing authority, the architecture, the engineering, the construction all go out to bid. It's not as if the offices of the Portsmouth Housing Authority are building it themselves. They are putting it out there for local contractors to bid on just as any other developer would. I did have a little bit of a look at the proposed sources and uses of these, both the Housing Authority and POA. They are both utilizing low-income housing tax credits. That's a competitive source in and among itself. There are developer fees that are paid to each developer. I did note that about $3.5 million is up for a developer fee. Normally, the first round of a developer fee is paid into the operations budget or the development budget, and a year or so later, you receive a deferred developer fee. What I did notice is that POA is taking they're not reinvesting the first paid developer fee. They are paying themselves, and they're also garnishing the deferred developer fee. PHA is investing the initial developer fee for program management, overhead, contingency, and then if there's some remaining would stay in operations. Anything that goes through the Housing Authority ends up being put forth towards more affordable housing. We have a unit in our community that develops housing. You created it as a city, and there's absolutely no reason that we should need to go elsewhere to be competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any last speakers before we move on to statements from the two proposals?
Mr. Mayor, I have one on Zoom.
Okay. Go ahead.
Jerry Duffy.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can, Jerry.
Okay, great. So thanks for listening to me this evening. I find this kind of an exciting meeting. You're in the enviable position of not being able to make a mistake in your choice. I think both entities would do a great job with this. I would like to make another point, which is back in January, you heard from a lot of citizens, I think there were about 160 of us, and the drumbeat that came out of the Portsmouth Citizens Housing Dialogue was urgency and action. So the comment I would like to make is that you could have picked PHA a year ago based on the work they'd already done and started this project a year ahead of time. It would have meant that 80 to 100 families would be moving into living rooms and their kitchens a year earlier than it looks like now. So I think that I would like to put my oar in for PHA, partly because they did all that work in advance, and also partly because they have all these local partnerships and relationships well established. The residents of PHA properties need various kinds of services, enjoy various kinds of services, including education and medical and healthcare and so on. And so those relationships they can't be quantified in terms of money we spend, but they are there, and they're very important. So I would like you just like to iterate again that this is a crisis, and if it's a crisis, we need to treat it like a crisis and move a little bit faster than we normally would. But having said that, I am very pleased that we're in the position we are. I think the staff, the people on your committee, the Housing Committee, and the Council have done a great job getting us to this point. So good luck in making the right decision. Like I said, it can't be a bad one. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Okay, and then do we have the other two members? Have they joined us?
Yes,
okay,
they're on.
so stating for the record that Byron and Dagan, you are?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Dagan?
Yep, I'm here as well.
Okay, 6:03 p.m. for the record. Thank you. Okay, I will now ask BHA and a POA representative to come up. We will start with PHA. 3 to 5 minutes, please. and then we will have the POA representative.
Thank you very much, members of the committee and to the council. PHA is truly honored to be considered for this important project here at the Sherburne School, and thank you sincerely for all the time that you've spent on this process and for all of the other advocacy, the whole Portsmouth Listens process, the land use committee where we passed the got new zoning and everything that's really gone on. Bringing such attention to this issue has been great. We are not your grandfather's housing authority. I've been very proud to be here for the last 12 years. We have created a modern, award-winning, nationally recognized organization right here in the city, and I'm very proud to be a part of it, as is all of the members of our board, of both boards, who are all volunteers and all citizens of Portsmouth, and all very capable in the depth and skill that they bring to projects like this. As I said the other day, if you didn't have a competent housing authority or you didn't have a housing authority, then you would definitely want to choose POA. They're a class act organization, and I've gotten to know those guys a little bit, and they're great at what they do. Obviously, they've got 12,000 units in 9 states or something, but you do have the PHA here. This is what you created us for, and we're very competent. I don't need to say that to toot our own horn, but I just want to point out the evidence of that. We have hard evidence, 50,000 square feet of it, successful at Ruth Lewin Griffin Place, highly celebrated. It was a triumph for the community. And as I said the other day, Christchurch project, our second project, the Multifamily Committee at New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority voted yesterday for us to be one of the 5 projects that were funded in the 2024 round out of 16 applicants. Just to give you reference, the cities of Manchester and Nashua have both received 4 awards over the last 15 years from multiple developers. So now you have the PHA, you have the city of Portsmouth that has received 2 in the past 5 years, batting 1,000. So part of this, what's important here is that we win. We actually win these tax credits, and we are well positioned to do that, not in just our experience, but because as a PHA, we have preference points, and because of the vouchers that we have preference points. There's actually, it's inside baseball, but there's actually 13 points in the qualified allocation plan for New Hampshire housing that only we qualify for. And the difference between the one that did get funded and not get funded in this last round was 5 points. So we know how to win, and what's important here is that not just for the Sherburne project, but we have penciled out a plan to invest in, develop, redevelop, and reposition our properties and other properties around the city long into the future. We have a $250 million 15-year plan that we've set out. It's very ambitious. But what's important to know is that all of these projects in succession build upon themselves. Success begets success, and investment makes us stronger and better and builds our balance sheet so we can continue to do the stuff that we do, also with the 1,000 people that we already house here and the investments that we make. And Jerry Duffy just pointed out, which I hadn't mentioned before, the partnerships that we have in the city, dozens and dozens of nonprofits that we work with every day, and that is a big benefit to being local. You know, all of the leadership and the chief of the police department and all of the leadership in the chief of the fire department all have my cell phone number and all know where I live, and that counts a lot in this business. So, and what keeps coming up too, and I think was maybe part of the impetus of the committee, was the idea of competition. There are extremely scarce resources in New Hampshire. There's one reason why we don't have enough of this stuff is because the amount of capital subsidy and tax credits is so small. So I appreciate the virtues of competition in a capitalist society, but it just doesn't apply here. Trust me. You don't have nonprofits competing for a scarce amount of resources is not a good idea. It's all the same resources. So communities are competing against each other, but to think that competition is going to be better, or bringing in more nonprofits into a community is going to be better, is just not true. there's only a certain amount, and the rules of competition or the virtues of it just don't apply here. So, so we encourage you to feel strongly that we got some great organizations here. POA is very capable, but I really ask that you choose the Portsmouth, or recommend the Portsmouth Housing Authority for all those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. And Alex?
Hi, everyone. Nice to be back a little earlier tonight than last time. Okay. Yeah, I guess I have some stuff I want to say, but first, I just want to say thanks, and I respect that this is a tough thing for you all to decide, because what we're talking about is very technical and confusing. And, I think kind of like when it comes down to it, hearing all the commentary, and there's like, how are you using the credits, and who's, investing what in the nonprofits and everything. I think basically POA and PHA are very similar. We're both going to try really hard for this. PHA can still go for credits next year. They're not going to be constrained. So like, that's not actually a knock against them. So I think at the end of the day, we're like fundamentally very equal and proposing kind of the same things, and we're really going to we'll both work really hard for it. And so I just wanted to get that out of the way. But I just wanted to touch quickly on two things that have come up, and I just offer this for like the discourse for this development, and then maybe for future ones too, but just some thoughts. First, there's been a lot of discussion about the importance of being local, and those considerations are totally legitimate. Obviously, it's important to a lot of people. This community has a lot of pride, a lot to be proud of. We greatly respect that. We greatly respect the Portsmouth Housing Authority. You're lucky to have them, and I think like our respect for the PHA has really blossomed over this process. But the one thing I will say is that given the city's housing needs, which are truly acute, I would just ask you all to consider, either for this development or for maybe future opportunities, whether having another resourceful, community-driven developer active here in the community could actually be a benefit overall. I totally agree with what Craig says. The state's resources are limited, and that is a major constraint on housing. So as he correctly points out, just inviting in more developers here isn't going to naturally create more housing, because you're stuck. There's a bottleneck on the state's resources. But I would also say that developers' staff capacities are another constraint. One developer can't do it all. And there is no prohibition against multiple developments going on at the same place in the same time. So I respectfully disagree that I think that having one more developer active in the community shouldn't be perceived as a zero-sum situation. In our experience working, especially with housing authorities, oftentimes it creates collaborative opportunities. More people and more organizations working on housing can bring new resources to this problem, and it will likely result in more housing getting built sooner, despite the constraints, the real constraints imposed by the state funding. So I would just urge you in the future to be open to new developers and consider that. Second, and this is forewarned, this is going to get a little boring and a little wordy, but there's been a lot of talk about cost. And again, I'm just offering this for the discourse around this development, no matter who is the developer. Cost is important. You have all asked perceptive questions about it. Because you've planned something that's too expensive, you are not going to get the state funding that you absolutely need to build it. We've tried to demonstrate in our responses that we think that the cost premium to our lower scale development is manageable, it's not prohibitive, and we don't think that it should mean that you shouldn't stretch for the neighborhood scale community that seemed to be the preference of the city and the neighborhood. We think it's possible with good design and some expertise. On the point of expertise, I'll give one example. The discussion around costs so far has been focused on the 9% tax credit. This is an essential part of the funding structure for both our proposals. But it's not the only part. We are both proposing a 9% and 4% twin tax credit structure. Why is this important here for this specific purpose? It's because the 9% credit is competitive, and the cost of your development is a factor in your competitiveness for the 9% credit. The 4% credit is not as competitive in the same way. You still have to live within the state's cost caps, which are pretty hard to live within, honestly, but they're not as restrictive as the 9% credit. So developers with expertise working with twin tax credit structures know how to use this dichotomy to the development's advantage. You can shift cost into the 4% side of the development away from the 9% side. You make the 9% less costly, more competitive, even though your total development costs don't change. So we've built 4 developments using twin tax credit structures. In our most recent, we were able to allocate the cost inside of the deal so that the 4% per unit development costs were 40% greater than the 9% side. That allows us to really optimize the credit on both sides. This is some of the expertise that we would like to use here or in some other development in Portsmouth so that the 9% application is competitive despite potentially higher total development costs. Okay, I'll stop with that now. One last point, and sorry for being technical and wordy after everyone has these kind of rousing community speeches and I'm like talking about tax credits. I just mentioned that in support of a broader point. Building more structures is probably more expensive. And developments that cost more are at greater risk of not being funded. But there are ways to get creative and do things a little differently. So whoever ends up developing this, we should keep an open mind about what's possible, use all the tools we have, and try to look for these ways to maximize the scarce tools we have and stretch for a development plan that people really want and the neighborhood wants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Okay. Closing public comment. I don't have a gavel. And I will turn it over for a few moments of discussion on the panel, and then we'll look for a motion or a motion on the floor first.
Would we have any ability to speak to the developers? None whatsoever? On stuff that hasn't been addressed?
Nope.
Okay.
Some,
Make sure
Andrew.
you pull microphones close when you guys speak.
Yeah. Andrew.
I think it's certainly been said that we have 2 very reputable and accountable developers who can not only take action but actually execute and fulfill what is inside these proposals and applications. And so I certainly am going to sleep easy at night knowing that one of these developers can walk into this city and understand how to execute it while still being very sensitive to an existing neighborhood and community around Portsmouth. Certainly beyond the people in this room tonight, we've heard a lot of commentary on how this may change an existing neighborhood that's been around for quite some time. And so with speaking to a point that has come up on a recurring basis, having healthy competition is a part of society. And while, yes, it is different under the guise of a nonprofit development, I think it still provides an opportunity for checks and balances. And oftentimes when you're looking at a free capital market and you see a similar product side by side, you're forced to consider the pluses and minuses of both, whether it's cost, quality, or the people behind it. And so I think this proposal process has really shown that beyond the city limits of Portsmouth, there are very capable developers. There are people out there that do have good intent and fulfilling intent to see not only a development come to fruition for the community, but also for the residents that it's serving. And so while PHA has to be celebrated, you can't go through this conversation without recognizing each of the incredible developments they have done and handled and will continue to handle. I still think that we have to pick our heads up and take ourselves out of Portsmouth from time to time to recognize that people can come from outside of Portsmouth and really contribute to our community. You know, it happens in the for-profit space. It happens in every industry and sector where people come in and they recognize the beauty that Portsmouth has, and they want to contribute to that in the positive side. So I think outside developers are not siphoning money, as one comment said. I think outside developers can also provide some quality control. PHA has operated, I think, in success for quite some time, where, yes, their residents are here tonight speaking in favor of them and speaking to their attributes, but also having quality control allows for reflection of one's own entity. So maybe it's going to force PHA to reflect on how they're doing business and maybe what they can do better. Maybe POA will do the same after this process as well. And I liked that POA included in their proposal that they would be open to collaborating with PHA. I thought that was a really nice note. I'm sure PHA would consider the same, but it ultimately lends itself to, you know, these folks that are coming from out of town are willing to hear an existing company's kind of story to make sure they can execute and fulfill this promise in this application. And so although choosing an outside developer may be diverging from the status quo, I still think it provides quite an opportunity to be successful in developing this school and creating a win-win for all parties involved, including PHA. Now, at the end of all of this, I think to say that PHA has 13 exclusive opportunities or credits, so to speak, awarded to them is incredible because it shows their track record and history. And I just don't want to look at this in a vacuum. And if this were owned by a private entity or a private landowner, how would that private landowner be considering these two developers as partners? So in summation, I think, yes, POA has developed in 9 different states, while PHA has developed more than 9 projects in this city. Both of those can be celebrated equally. I would be thrilled and will be thrilled to see either company get this contract. And I think we can look at this as an opportunity to reflect how the city of Portsmouth looks at partnerships on this project or any future projects, because we do not want to be the city of the closed door necessarily. We don't want outside developers to think, oh, can't go there because they already have their minds made up. So I hope that this does provide reflection for PHA and POA and this board and the city council to look at these opportunities more so as a good discussion-based collaboration rather than a unilateral decision.
Perfect. Jen?
Yeah, I think this idea of competition is very interesting. I think Craig did a good job of articulating that, like, the credits are what they are, and we're all going to be competing for these same scarce resources. I think I would push back at this idea that bringing in another developer creates competition when really we're looking at this one specific parcel. And there's absolutely nothing stopping whether it's POA or another developer who came forward with a great proposal from purchasing land in Portsmouth and building affordable housing. And I think that's, like, we really need to think about that, right? Like this, there's land for sale. What we're doing is deciding what we should do with the city resource. And the idea that, you know, if we were living in a world where we had more affordable housing units than people who wanted to live in them, then we would have this sense of competition of like, well, this person's giving me a month of free rent. And so competition makes sense in that case. I have a hard time understanding where, you know, the wait list is 13 years long, how adding a different developer creates competition that helps the people who are living or hoping to live in affordable housing. I also think it's really interesting your comment about how do private landowner think about these two choices. What we're doing is signing a lease with a group and then also trying to be responsible to the people who will live in that facility. And I think we have thought a lot about how this project will look, who will be able to win tax credits. I really think that for the majority of the life of this lease, it's not going to be about that. It's going to be about the experience of somebody living there. And I think back a lot to what you guys have said about the hardest emails to receive are those people who are saying, like, I don't have a place to live. The city council, this board, whatever, we all have to be responsible to the city, to residents, and PHA is ultimately, there is a line for us to hold them accountable, or at least for the city council to hold the PHA accountable for the experience of the people living there. That I feel like is really important to think through here. I don't want to suggest that POA wouldn't do a beautiful job, but I think we have less of a right to interfere if in 10, 15 years we get a lot of resident complaints because for some reason they aren't doing a great job. Those are just a couple things that are.
I think that's great. Thank you, Jen. We're going to go John, and then Byron, and then not to rush anyone, but I think we're going to try to get a vote here or a census, and then Eric. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. So we'll get everyone a few moments to speak, and then we're going to try to get a vote on the table. I know there's a elementary, middle school choirs tonight, and people want to see their kids sing.
Okay. When I think of something like this, there are a couple of ways to look at it, probably more than a couple of ways. Some people are results-oriented. They have a picture in their mind of the results they want to get, and sometimes they manipulate the process to get to the results that they want. I am very much a process person. I've been on the winning side and losing side of many, many votes, but I'm most comfortable when I'm comfortable with the process that led to that particular decision. In this case, contrary to what some others think, I'm very comfortable with this process. I think that we took our time. We went through a process that allowed us to become better educated of this whole type of thing. And so I'm very pleased and proud of that. Let me talk, I'm at this point in time in favor of going with the POA proposal, and I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about why. First of all, I'll talk about the RFP process. It's kind of interesting. In the RFP world, I felt, and I agree, that this was a wonderful RFP that was done by the city. It provided not only information about what items the city was looking for, but also a rubrics, a matrix, whatever term you want to use, that outlined what things were important and how they were going to be measured. Not only did the city staff develop that, it sent it out to all of us and to the city council to say what things aren't included in there. So we all had an opportunity to look at the RFP and decide if there was something that wasn't addressed there that we felt was important. So the RFP process was inclusive of all of our ideas, and it told the proposers what was important and how they were going to be rated. And at the end of the day, POA was the winner of that process. And I think that's very important because it's a process, and it told everybody what the rules were, and at the end of the day, it provided a score. It does, just to kind of close that loop, in the RFP process, it does provide a statement that the total score will not be the only deciding factor. So, I mean, the second thing I want to talk about is the idea of community engagement. We've talked a lot about community engagement. Having the people in that neighborhood, not just the people who are going to live there in the future, but the neighborhood to be comfortable with it. I think that in the RFP itself and in conversations around this table, we wanted to create a neighborhood environment. And I think if you compare the two proposals, and that's what we're doing right now, we have one that created a neighborhood environment, the other which provided, I guess the term that was used the other day was an elevator building. So there is a distinction there. And with all due respect, I'm disappointed that the PHA didn't create more of a neighborhood. What they provided was something that looks like it belongs down on Court Street and not in the middle of a neighborhood. I use the example in these meetings we've had about how Woodbury Manor fits into the neighborhood of Woodbury Avenue. This doesn't look with the proposal from PHA doesn't look anything like Woodbury Manor. It looks like Court Street. Another concern I have is the concern with regards to PHA talks about the Griffin Place. And they've done a fabulous job there, and they deserve full credit for it. It's to the best of my knowledge, it's the only project they've done in the last number of years. Now they're taking on the Christ Church project. I'm a little concerned with them taking on two major projects at the same time. If you have a contractor that you're using, and that contractor is doing multiple jobs, where do they place the priority? Whereas POA seems to be a larger organization that can handle more projects at once. The other thing I'm concerned about is we've talked about the fact that we need to be concerned with our fiduciary responsibility. I didn't know, and I appreciate Councilor Tabor bringing it up the other day, that with the Ruth Griffin Place, the city actually contributed $300,000+, and in this proposal, there's an open-ended statement with regards to using other CIP money from the city for this project. Is that $1 million? Is that $2 million? Is it $200,000? We don't know. And that concerns me. It concerns me that we don't, with POA, and according to the notes that we got from the staff, they have indicated that they can finance all of these things on their own. So there'll be no impact on the taxpayers. That concerns me a little bit. So for those reasons, I would support the POA proposal. And I'll make one more comment, and the fact is that at the council meeting the other night, there was a woman who spoke about the old Seacrest Village and Mariners Village. I was on the council at that time. And first of all, it's a little different, and the fact is that was a private piece of property that was being sold, different than what we're dealing with here. But the comment I do want to make is the person who developed Mariners Village is a guy by the name of John Madden out of Manchester, not from Portsmouth, but he did a fabulous job with it. So I'm not too concerned with that aspect of it, but those are my comments.
Thank you, John. And we'll go to Byron. Byron, you might be. There you go.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the comments being made by the committee members. In the interest of time and moving things along in the discussion, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that the committee recommend to the council that the Sherborne property be entered into agreement with the Portsmouth Housing Authority for the development for below market rate. If I have a second, I can start the discussion there.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Seconded by John O'Leary.
Appreciate it. So the point I wanted to make, and I put this in a letter I put out or put to the committee because I didn't know if I was going to be able to be here this evening, is I think there's a fundamental difference between the relationship of the PHA to the city and POA. And that is that the PHA, the board of the PHA is appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. And that's a direct line of accountability. And the property at Sherborne belongs to the city of Portsmouth and to the taxpayers. And that line of accountability relative to the property, I think, is fundamental to this decision. I think the POA process or their proposal and the process they've taken so far is really commendable, and I think there's a lot of reasons why we should be lucky to have them at the table. However, I think like nuts and bolts at the end of the day, I think both organizations have the capacity and the competency to drive a project the community will be proud of and will be great for Portsmouth. But I think the fundamental relationship the city has with PHA is why I think they're the partner we should partner with. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. So, any other quick speakers before we vote on that motion? Mr. Anderson?
Should we vote on that motion, or should we still continue the discussion for whatever? I mean, the motion's been made. Does that have to be resolved?
Do you have any discussion for that motion, or do we want to call?
No, I have my comments as everybody else has made prior to the motion. That's all. So, I mean, I can make them and let the motion stand.
I think you can make them within the motion.
Sure. All right. Well, you know, it's. I mean, everything that's been said this evening is valid. It's appropriate. Some of us have been involved in this from the original conception of this project when it took place at the Sherborne Auditorium 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I can't even remember right now. And so, and here we are right now. Between the two proposals, the only one thing I found, and I think the committee's done an excellent job in any piece of dialogue and information that's been given, but we've never had a one-on-one, the capability of a one-on-one dialogue with the developers. It's been, you know, it's gone from the committee to the council to and that took place the other night. I still have some questions that weren't answered that would be important in making my decision on which developer. You know, one of the things is, or two of the things, the two proposals are fundamentally different in the way they visually express themselves to whoever wants to look at them. One is, like you said, like John said, it's a elevator. This term elevator building versus the POA concept of the two different concepts. Which one fits better with that community? Which one fits better with that? That's maybe a subjective answer. I've been very concerned with the term, since I've read PHA's proposal, with the term mothball. I don't know what mothball is, okay? It's like they have the structure to build the basic building and mothball the school for whatever amount of time, I don't know, till the place falls in on itself or becomes just unattendable to even resurrect. I don't know. But that's an important thing. POA addressed that in saying that they would take that facility to complete resurrection.
If the committee would agree, that does seem an important question. We could suspend the rules.
I don't think we should suspend the rules. I mean, we can vote on it, but I would.
It's just been.
I would say that we should not. I think that we.
I agree with the chair.
We have said it that we will not be asking questions that was a question that was brought up at our last meeting where we, as a committee, voted that that didn't need to go in the written questions.
It didn't make it into it, but I did mention it. It just didn't make it into that
Yeah.
realm of questions.
Yeah,
that
it
they
was
had the
voted down by the
opportunity
committee to not
answer
be
on.
included.
And I think that's an important component of what
I'm not
their intentions
disagreeing with you, Mr. Anderson. I'm just
And it's
saying
an
as the committee voted to approve the question, that question was not approved. So I don't think it is appropriate to go back and forth with that.
That's all right. That's all right. It just leaves a question mark in my mind.
Yes.
That's all.
I think-
Mary.
I do recognize that there were different approaches to the depth of outreach that each developer was going to go through. I was more impressed with the POA presentation of, how much outreach you were going to do within the community, within the neighborhood, within, before they started to put ink to, take the pencil to ink on their proposal. And I would suspect that PHA would be sensitive to that. I just don't know to the extent of how sensitive or how outreaching they would be within the community and the neighborhood. This has been there is a neighborhood component to this, and one proposal fits better than another, in my opinion. So I've read these proposals, as I think many of you, and put them on the scale, and they're pretty damn even. And outside of a couple of details, that would reflect on my position.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. If the committee is okay, the two members on our Zoom are not going to be available in a moment. So we could call this vote. If it fails, then we can call the opposite vote.
I have some things I
Okay, let's go.
I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
Megan, then Mary. Mary, then Megan.
Okay. I feel like it was a little bit quick to put the motion out there just because we all didn't get an opportunity to speak yet.
And I'll take that. I think we could have called a motion first and then discussed our opinions under the motion.
Okay. So first and foremost, I just wanted to highlight that the Sherburne site itself was graded and scored highest, and that is why it was selected. I also want to stress that we have some of the best and the brightest staff that were put on this. They went through rigorous hours of work to score, and one did score higher than the other. And so I think it's important to note, we picked the Sherburne School because it scored the highest on that land evaluation with the land use committee and the team that worked on that. And so it sort of makes sense for us we went through the RFP process, the RFQ, which was fantastic. I think it's great that we did that because from the start of all of this, the process was wrong. We've corrected it, and I think that that's been great. POA has stressed, just really highlighted some great community involvement. It's apparent they've taken the time to try to evaluate the local area itself and came up with a proposal that makes sense. I know folks have said that there is an 8-lane highway that separates some of the community members who have spoken, not even against, but just with concerns regarding the redevelopment. But there also are 17 homes. If you want to just focus on the little neighborhood that's right there, it's a 17-home, single-family neighborhood right there. So I think it's really important that we're finding something that fits, that makes sense. And I just felt like POA did a really nice job, and the city staff scored it that way as well. I know I've said it before, multiple avenues. We need to do this right. We're at a really exciting point. At the end of the day, when we leave this meeting, we're going to be leaving with a recommendation to move forward with affordable housing in our city. That's so exciting. We're finally here, guys. But I think it's really important, too, that we are making a recommendation that actually makes the most sense based on what we were asking for. And it's the city's land, so we have to be doing what makes sense for the current residents, but then also the new residents that are going to be coming in, and community engagement, community feel, and having it be a successful project that other neighborhoods are now going to be going, yes, come on down. I know you guys have a great process. The city has done such a great job with that. And I know that they're going to find the best person, whether it's PHA in the future, POA, or anybody else who may come out of the woodworks, because they see that the city of Portsmouth is open-minded and is trying to just work and drive things in a way that makes sense for the city and makes sense so we can keep good folks working here. I want us to make sure we're following our process. We put the time and effort into it. So that's my 2 cents.
Mary?
Hi, thanks. I've struggled with some of my thoughts to share, and then also which way I would kind of recommend tonight. I think there's merits from both of the proposals. And then kind of overall, I'm frustrated that it's taken so long to get to this point. I was really delighted to hear of this proposal back in, I think, late 2021 or early 2022, and super disappointed at the initial reaction. Because quite frankly, that means we're not in a construction phase and we don't have new neighbors coming to where I live. I think both entities do have a proponent of community engagement involved. I imagine that POA really stressed that in their application because they're not local to us. And so I have trust in both sides. Overall, I find the conversations around neighborhood feel to be difficult because I don't actually feel that there's much unification within our neighborhood if you're thinking about it from a Pease to Coakley perspective. There's a whole lot of different types of development there. There's a lack of land in Portsmouth overall, so we must build up. And while there are certainly sustainability components of not having an elevator building, there's nothing wrong with living in an elevator building. I've lived in 6th floor walk-ups that didn't have one, and I would have really liked that, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think also when we're thinking about the financial responsibility of our community and our town, there's a greater financial responsibility to ensuring the health and well-being of our neighbors that I think far outweighs some of the other components and reflections of that. And while all of that being said, and perhaps there's an intonation of where I might be leading myself with this recommendation, I was really impressed with a lot of the elements from POA, and I don't see it as competition, I see it as engaging and widening the footprint of how affordable housing works and proceeds within our town, within our city, and then looking to create opportunities where there is a snowballing effect of folks wanting to bring housing to each of their neighborhoods. There are other land parcels in the city in which we are looking to have development happen. When we had those meetings over the summer and did those site walks, there was opposition within each of the communities. So I look forward to some of those folks seeing this process and getting more excited about it, especially considering all of the land that's available. I think with POA as well, I thought there was a strong display of their sustainability process, transportation best practices as well. That could also yield to a higher quality of life, which could create a more cohesive feel. So a place where even though I live further away, I might want to walk down and enjoy some of those open spaces. And then finally, I think depending on how this recommendation goes and how the vote moves forward with City Council, there should be a reconsideration of the RFP process potentially. So that we can make sure that we are moving with speed. So that's a couple of different things, and I'll probably figure out what I'm going to recommend in about 2 seconds. But I wanted to have the opportunity to say this, and I know, I'm sorry, Byron, if you're going to be late to the concert and as well to Dagan, but thank you.
No, I just want to say thank you all so much. Your input on all of this, from the questions to the initial, to all the committee members helping with the RFQ and RFP. As Megan said, this is a new way of the city taking on this process. And so I'm really excited about that. Just for the record, the 3 councilors will be abstaining from this vote. This will be just committee members taking the vote. The vote will then, the recommendation will be brought to the council for a special meeting on Monday. So with that, if there's no more comment, are we okay? So we will call the vote. It will be a roll call vote.
And the motion is, please?
The motion is to recommend from the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee the disposition of the Sherburne School with PHA as their development partner.
Disposition of the Sherburne property.
Property, I'm sorry. I keep saying the property.
big difference.
Yes, that is a big difference. Okay.
We knew what you meant.
Yes, so, thank you. The options are yes, no, and abstain. Mr. Anderson?
No.
Corsetti?
No.
Lone?
Yes.
Maddow? Did we lose them?
Byron's there, but I don't see Dagan.
Dagan left.
Dagan left.
Byron's
Dagan Green abstains.
Yeah.
Yes, is that in the affirmative?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Maker of the motion, yeah.
Maker of the motion. Mr. O'Leary?
No.
Mr. Simonis?
Yes.
Sevens Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses to 1, 2, 3 noes. And then we are missing, again, 2 committee members. So the motion passes 4-3 for the recommendation to partner with PHA, and that will be presented to the council. I thank you all so much. And then the next,
Can I ask a question, please?
yes,
How will that be?
it will be presented as the motion, as the results were taken. So 4 yeas and 3 noes, and then the rest of the members listed as absent.
Okay, thank you.
Will Dagan's comments be included in any
We will include this.
Okay.
And
They're part of the record now.
they are part of the record. And thank you so much. Our next meeting will be, we'll let you guys know, and then we'll go on to site selection of other things and the other things that this committee is looking to do.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night, Portsmouth.